Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest this morning, malpractice attorney Clint Kelly. He's terrific at what he does. And listen, we've got calls I want to get to, but before we do that real quickly, and before we get to the story about the hospital utensils not being properly sanitized, we are embarking on the holidays. And you make a really good point during the break about staffing. Look, here at Channel 5, we're going to be more on the skeleton staff. News slows down, but we're always here, but there won't be as many reporters. You yourself said as an attorney, not a lot going on this time of year, so it slows down. Judges taking time off. What about if you get sick on Christmas Day? The staffing in hospitals and all that stuff, isn't it down?
It is. During the holiday season, while the hospitals will have full schedules and they'll schedule their staff to come in during the holidays, the truth is a lot of these employees will not appear. They'll call in sick, they'll have a conflict of some kind, and so when you go to the hospitals, they're understaffed. I mean, we've had claims, people have called us who've been injured in hospitals because there simply weren't enough people to take care of them, and the attention to detail is not the same either. And there's a well-known phenomenon in medicine that your chances of getting good care are better during the week than the weekends.
Sure.
That's just a fact. Well, the same goes with getting care outside the holidays versus in the holidays. I don't know, you can't control when you get sick, but it's something to be mindful of. If you need to get health care and you're going to a hospital, you may have to, squeaky wheel gets the grease. You may have to bang a little harder to get the kind of care that you deserve because the staffing level probably will not be the same as it would be outside the holidays.
Great point. Let's take a few calls, then we'll get to your story as well. But we'll go to Charles. Charles, good morning. Hi, Charles.
Yes, over the summer, I was supposed to do an inpatient study that would have made me money, but I was committed by Vanderbilt instead. While being an inpatient, I was 62 to 4. They weren't always feeding me food, and when I got out, there were things I wasn't able to do anything about, like a late fee on a storage unit, paying a credit card bill, or having a return check on my account. If I have a case, would I sue Big Bad Vanderbilt, or would I sue the doctor?
A 6204 certificate, if I'm understanding Charles correctly, is an involuntary commitment. It can be as a result of a suicidal ideation or some type of sickness where they're concerned the patient can't take care of himself.
Okay.
The doctor has to sign off on that, and by law, you can be treated involuntarily or committed for up to 72 hours before we have a judicial hearing. You do have a right under the law to bring a claim against the doctor and the hospital both for wrongful commitment. There are elements to the claim that must be proven in order to do that. So yes, you would bring your claim against the doctor and against the hospital in that situation, but you're going to have to prove that the commitment was wrongful.
And there are guidelines, because I would think that's the very last resort, to take someone's free will away and treat them against their own. And you would think they're doing this not because, all right, let's do this so we can make some money. They're doing it because they think this person needs to be protected from himself or is unable to make some decisions for whatever situation to be treated, and we need to do it for him.
Correct. I had a case like that years ago. I'll tell you, Charles, they are difficult cases to win if you're the patient because juries tend to defer to the doctors and the hospitals in that situation where they being the healthcare providers, have a concern that the patient is at risk of harming himself or harming others. But again, there is a remedy under the law, and you can bring that claim if you wish.
Especially if after the fact, when this has happened and someone brings a case, and if someone wants to, that's fine. But let's just say they do take the right away and treat the person, and then when it's all said and done, he's fine. He's good. I mean, one thing if they took your rights away and treated you and somehow really messed it up and you were worse off before you went in there, maybe you'd have it. But if they treated you, whether or not they really made a difference or not, what's the damages? Okay, there was 72 hours when they took your rights away, which is a big deal, but you weren't harmed by it.
Well, I think what Charles is saying, if I understood his call, was while he was away, he had credit card bills and other items that needed to be taken care of, and they weren't for however long he was committed, and so certainly that would be damages. That's an imposition.
No, you're right. You're right.
So I understand what his claim of damages would be, but again, he's going to have to prove that the commitment was wrongful.
Gotcha. Good point.
Okay.
Good call, though. Let's go to Joe. Good morning, Joe. Hey, Joe.
Hey, good morning. Just a couple of comments. I think Mr. Kelly will agree that our state legislators are the ones that put these caps on these awards, and it's to protect the insurance companies and big business. That's the whole reason for that. But that being said, if you call any doctor or whatever, the first thing they'll say, if this is an emergency, go to the emergency room. Well, if you check around, you find out that most emergency rooms are staffed by temporary people, and some of them are nurse practitioners and not doctors. And you can get in a real big mess fooling around with these emergency rooms. So, like Mr. Kelly says all along, if you can, stay out of a hospital.
Well, I think that's a good rule of thumb anyway, but sometimes you have no choice.
Yeah, obviously, if you have to go, Joe's.
I'm
let me
with it.
follow up on a couple of things, Joe. So
Okay.
Joe's absolutely right. It was the legislature that passed the caps back in 2011. They're the ones that limited a patient's right to get full compensation. It was a government-imposed cap.
Gotcha.
That the Supreme Court, I believe, is going to strike down as violating our state constitution. Secondly, he is also correct that we are seeing more nurse practitioners being the prime healthcare provider, the top of the chain, if you will, in the emergency rooms. That's the person you're probably going to see in a lot of these hospitals. And by the way, that's going to happen more and more. It's going to become more prolific.
But what the heck are the doctors doing? I got to be honest with you, because you're right. I've seen it in myself. Now, I have a doctor, my personal physician, who's very attentive and is great. But when I've been to emergency rooms or to other places or with other people, it's always the nurses. And most of them I found to have been terrific. But I'm wondering, what the heck are the doctors doing? What are they doing? They're sitting there cooling their heels in the back, just, I mean, how hard is it? You go in, you spend a few minutes with a patient. I mean, I don't see where and again, I'm on the outside looking in. People may say, Nick, what are you doing all day when you do a story? But I look at this. What the heck are the doctors doing? I have images of them on the golf course sipping a pina colada.
Well, it's not about what the doctors are doing, Nick. It's about what it costs to hire.
See the patient.
No, what it costs to hire the staff. See, what the hospitals are doing is they are hiring emergency physician groups that are staffing these hospitals with nurse practitioners because it's cheaper.
So they're choosing to staff them with nurses as opposed to doctors, and maybe just one or two supervisory doctor who's really busy because he has to bounce around to all these patients that all the nurses are handling.
Correct.
Or she.
A nurse practitioner's bill for a service, the same service that an emergency room physician is going to provide, is going to be lower. In fact, substantially lower. Used to be we griped about the fact that physician assistants were manning these emergency rooms. Those are people, if you want to look at like a totem pole, the MD is at the top. The middle is the physician assistant or PA.
Okay.
And below that is the nurse practitioner. All three of those folks have the ability to prescribe medications and perform most medical services. The one that charges the least amount of money is usually the nurse practitioner. They're cheaper, and so that's why they're beginning to man most of the emergency rooms, particularly in the more rural areas, because it's less expensive for the hospitals.
But there's a reason that there's a cost differential.
Absolutely.
Education and skills. And I understand the nurse practitioner at the bottom, that individual may be able to draw my blood and maybe give me an antibiotic for my throat, whatever. But I mean, come on, you're paying for this, you go in with something serious, you need to see a doctor.
Absolutely. I mean, the doctors, most of the emergency room physicians are on salary with their emergency physician group. So whether they see 10 patients or 100 patients, they're going to get paid the same amount of money absent a bonus structure. But with the nurse practitioner, what the hospitals are doing, a lot of them now, is they're saving money by bringing nurse practitioners in because they charge less, even though between me and you, our healthcare plan is supposed to pay whatever it is, whether it's an ER doc or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. So sometimes we're getting less expertise, but from the plan standpoint, we are paying the same. Now, the insurance company pays the ultimate amount of money, but this to me is a bargain between the insurance companies and the hospitals to lower costs, and the way to do that is have nurse practitioners manning the helm.
Does that mean there's fewer jobs for doctors now?
No, it's just that they're doing different things.
Okay.
They're not necessarily the first person you see, and they may not even come into the treatment regimen unless there's something like a heart attack. I mean, if you come in there with bronchitis, you may never get seen by an emergency room physician because the hospitals think that's not, for lack of a better term, worthy of the medical doctor's services.
I'll be honest with you, half the time, and I've done this with my allergy situation and when I went to the hospital for anaphylactic shock once, I didn't know if the person was seeing me was the main practitioner or someone else. And sometimes I assumed it was the doctor, and I found out later it wasn't. Yeah, my care was fine, and I did fine. I literally didn't know when they come in. It's not like there's some badge that says, I don't know, Clint, how's the patient going to know? Does it say, oh, I'm a nurse practitioner here?
Yeah,
or does it say doctor?
No, it'll have on the end of the name of an MD, if it's a medical doctor.
What person when you're sick looks that
Well,
close
you need
to see?
you
I
need
just
to.
don't. I
You
haven't.
need to start looking. That's the whole
Well, I
point.
guess. And then
need
if
to
you
start
don't,
looking.
but I mean, I literally did not know till later who it was that saw me.
Let me suggest something to people. You're going to get the care that you ask for most of the time, or demand. I think demand's the right word. What people have to do in the healthcare system, they're going to start demanding levels of care. We pay through the nose for healthcare, and yet we put up with a substandard level of care at times that's uncalled for. So what you do is when you go and seek healthcare services, if you want a medical doctor, you demand a medical doctor. And if they're not going to provide a medical doctor and you have the ability, go somewhere else. If that's what you want. If you want more than just 5 minutes of time with somebody, you demand more than 5 minutes of time. And I'm telling you, most of the time, squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's just the way it's set up. I'm sad that a lot of people, a lot of patients go into healthcare and just take what they give them. They just take it. Even though they're paying a lot or they've got good insurance, they say, oh, well, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And it's a damn shame. People ought to get their patient advocates in there to push back and say, no, I want my husband or my wife or myself, I want a second opinion, or I want more time spent with me. Check this out. You know, like say if you think there's a test being done and you don't think it's adequate, or they're kind of pushing you off, all this just indigestion, that's not something wrong with your heart. I want a test done, doc. How do you know? What have you done to rule this out? Push back.
But of course, every time you ask for more, you're going to be paying more.
No, not that. Well, you got insurance, Nick. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
I mean,
most people have.
Most
but
people.
not
Well,
everyone.
if you're uninsured, that's a
a
whole.
whole different ball of wax. Yeah.
But just push. People need to demand good health care. That's just what they have to do nowadays. If they want to get the best care that they can get, don't just take what they give you.
Take a break on that note. More with Clint, as well as more of your phone calls right after this.